Think back to October 14th, 2008. What was the weather? What did you wear? You can't remember. But for one woman, that day and every day since she was 12 is as vivid as this very moment. She does not guess. She does not reconstruct. She does not say, I think. She knows. Ask her what she had for breakfast on March 3rd, 1995, and she can tell you it was cereal, that she ate it at the kitchen counter, that the morning news mentioned a storm moving up the East Coast, that she felt slightly irritated because she had a math test later that day. Now ask yourself this: what did you feel on March 3rd, 1995? Not what you did, not where you were, but what you felt. Most of us remember our past the way we remember a dream: blurry, edges, missing pieces, entire years compressed into a handful of emotional snapshots. Memory, for us, is a scrapbook. Torn pages, faded ink, entire chapters missing. But Jill Price's mind is not a scrapbook. It is an eternal hard drive with no delete button. Listen closely. At the age of 12, something changed. Jill began noticing that her memories didn't behave like everyone else's. Days didn't fade. Arguments didn't soften. Embarrassments didn't dissolve into humor over time. Instead, each day was sealed, labeled, and filed away with microscopic detail, like a diary she never wrote but could read at any time. And at first it didn't seem frightening. In fact, it felt useful. Teachers would mention a historical event, and she would instinctively remember what she herself had been doing that exact day. Someone would bring up a news story from years ago, and she could recall where she was sitting when she first heard it. Dates weren't numbers. They were places she could visit. But here's where it becomes unsettling. She couldn't stop visiting. Imagine your worst memory: a breakup, a humiliation, a funeral. Now imagine remembering it not as a story, but as a relived experience. The same tightening in your chest, the same dryness in your throat, the same sting behind your eyes, every time, even 20 years later. Would you still call that a gift? For decades, Jill assumed she was alone, that perhaps this was just how memory worked for everyone, and no one talked about it. But eventually, the flood became impossible to ignore. She began writing letters to scientists, trying to explain what it felt like to live inside a mind that never forgot. Most never replied, until one did. His name was James McGaugh, a neuroscientist at the University of California, Irvine, who had spent his career studying how memory forms and why it fades. Jill's letter made a simple but astonishing claim. She remembered everything. Naturally, he was skeptical. Because in neuroscience, memory is not a perfect recording. It is fragile, malleable, more like wet clay than stone. Every time you remember something, you slightly rewrite it, which is why eyewitness testimony is notoriously unreliable. So McGaugh and his team began testing her. They gave her random dates years in the past with no warning, asked what day of the week it was, what major news events occurred, what she had personally done that day. Her answers were immediate, effortless, consistent. Then they checked newspaper archives, weather reports, television schedules, over and over again. She was right. After 6 years of clinical investigation, in 2006, her condition was formally documented in a peer-reviewed scientific paper. Not as a miracle, not as a talent, but as a neurological phenomenon. They called it highly superior autobiographical memory, hyperthymesia. Now pause for a moment. If memory is supposed to fade, and hers doesn't, what's different about her brain? Brain scans revealed subtle but important differences in the structure called the caudate nucleus. Picture your brain as a massive library. Millions of books arriving every second: sights, sounds, smells, conversations, emotions. Normally, the brain has a sorting system, a librarian that decides which books get archived and which ones get thrown away, because storage is limited and forgetting is necessary. The caudate nucleus is part of that sorting system. Think of it as the librarian that manages habits, routines, and the organization of experience over time. It helps decide what becomes automatic and what becomes permanent. In Jill's brain, that librarian doesn't throw anything away. Every emotional book gets stamped and shelved, every awkward silence, every joyful afternoon, every loss, filed forever. So instead of a library with rotating exhibits, where old memories are replaced with new hers, is a library with no exit, no disposal room, no closing hours. Now let me ask you something. What if your brain never allowed a memory to soften? Most of us depend on forgetting to survive. Grief fades, not because love disappears, but because the brain slowly lowers the volume. Embarrassment becomes humor because the emotional charge dissolves. Even trauma dulls over time, allowing us to move forward without reliving it in full color. But Jill doesn't get that mercy. A painful breakup from 1999 doesn't feel like history. It feels like this morning. The argument you forgot last year? She remembers the exact words spoken in one from 1987, and the tone, and the silence that followed, and the way her stomach dropped when she realized it was over. People often imagine perfect memory as a superpower, but superpowers in stories always come with a cost. For Jill, the cost is permanence. She cannot outgrow embarrassment because it never leaves. She cannot forgive through time because time doesn't blur the edges. She cannot bury grief because it never gets buried. Listen carefully. There is a reason evolution designed memory to be unreliable. Forgetting is not a flaw. It is a survival mechanism. Without it, regret would be endless. Without it, shame would never heal. Without it, loss would never become bearable. Jill once described her experience as being trapped in the past, not metaphorically, neurologically. Each memory alive and waiting like a room she can walk into at any moment, whether she wants to or not. And the door never locks behind her. So the next time you forget where you left your keys, or what someone said during an argument, or how badly something once hurt, consider that your brain may not be failing you. It may be protecting you, because the greatest gift your mind can offer is not remembering everything. It's knowing what to let go.